Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm going to be having a discussion about why manga is predominantly released in black and white. I have a memory which has always kind of stood out to me. I was in a bookstore and this little kid, I believe he was maybe like a 5 or 6 year old boy, was running by, and there was a volume, I believe it was the first volume of One Piece on the shelf. And he grabbed it very enthusiastically. I don't know if he knew of One Piece or if he just liked the cover, I'm not sure. He opened it up and then upon seeing the inside of it, very quickly put it back. And while I can't of course be 100% sure about what his reason was for putting back the manga so quickly, I've always kind of assumed that it was because the manga itself was in black and white. And that's something that can actually still surprise a lot of people. I think there's a lot of aspects of manga that fans take for granted, and certainly the black and white artwork is one of them. It can still surprise a lot of people, and so I thought I might have a quick discussion about why manga is released in black and white. So there's several reasons why manga is released predominantly in black and white. The main reason comes down to workload. So if you compare the release of a manga to the release of a Western comic, which is generally released in color, there is quite a difference. Western comics, as far as I'm aware, are typically released about 20 to 25 pages per month, whereas a manga, it's not surprising to see a manga be released 20 to 25 pages weekly. Then there's manga that's released bi-weekly, which I believe is about 30 to 35 pages, and then if it's released monthly, it's about 50 pages. So there's a lot more manga being produced at a much faster rate than Western comics. And part of that comes down to the fact that it is in black and white. It is much quicker to do. It's also worth noting that a lot of Western comics, if you take a look at the staff who have worked on the comic, you'll quite often see that the colorist is typically someone else other than the main artist. So they actually hire someone else to do color artwork for their release. In contrast, mangaka themselves, they do have assistants, don't get me wrong, but if they do any form of color artwork, which I'll discuss in a little bit, they typically do it themselves, and only a little bit. So I would say the first main reason overall is workload. The second main reason that I've come across is to do with cost. So actually I want to take an example here. So I have a copy here of Weekly Shonen Jump, and if you take a look at the cover, you will see that it says that this entire book, keep in mind this is how thick it is, it's quite a thick release. It cost 250 yen, which is very, very cheap. And you'd be wondering to yourself, how can a magazine that's this thick be sold for such a cheap price? And there's a couple of reasons for that. Of course, there's advertising, etc., etc. But the main thing I want to talk about is paper quality. So the paper quality for these magazines tends to be quite low in order to be able to cut costs down. Now, granted, there are color pages every so often, and these color pages do tend to be printed on higher quality paper, but predominantly manga in these manga magazines is published on this really cheap paper that's very low quality, but keeps the price down overall. Now, that's not to say that there isn't any color, of course, because as I mentioned before, mangaka do sometimes do some color pages for their manga. Typically it'll be the beginning of the chapter, sometimes it's during a main event, like an important event during the chapter, but typically they're kind of seen as a bonus, so it's only a couple of pages that'll be released in color. Now, that's not to say that there aren't manga that have been released entirely in color. For instance, the example I would like to give is Osamu Tezuka's Unico. This manga was released entirely in full color, and it is a very beautiful looking manga, but it's very unusual for a manga like this to be released in full color in its initial form. And I do believe that in this case, the reason that it was in full color was that Sanrio, who were the people who helped create Unico, wanted to release this in Western markets, and so they released it left to right and had it in full color in order to try to appeal. I don't know how successful that was, but that's a noteworthy example. And then of course you see some examples which, as far as I'm aware, are examples of manga being colored in after the fact, after the initial black and white artwork. For instance, of course, a very popular example is the High School of the Dead full color releases, but I do believe, for instance, there were full color releases of the Dragon Ball manga, but in those cases they're colored in after the fact. And in fact, I'm not even aware if in those particular releases, if the original mangaka does the coloring or if another colorist does the coloring for them? Of course, if you know the answer, I would absolutely love to hear it. So in conclusion, there are two primary reasons why manga is released in black and white artwork. It comes down to workload. It's much quicker to be able to produce black and white artwork than it is to color in artwork, and you're able to get a lot more content out. And then it also comes down to pricing, particularly when it comes to the manga magazines, but this also applies to even the tankobon releases, with any color pages being produced for the manga typically being saved for more special editions of it. So that's my discussion on why manga is predominantly released in black and white artwork. I do think it's quite interesting how many people still get a bit thrown off by the fact that manga is in black and white, and so it's always interesting to take a look at this topic. But of course, I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts on it. What are your thoughts on the fact that manga is predominantly released in black and white artwork? Do you know of any other reasons why manga is released predominantly in black and white? What are your thoughts on manga that are in full color, such as the original release of Unico, or releases afterwards such as High School of the Dead and Dragon Ball? What do you think about the fact that manga magazines are so cheap because of the fact that they use low quality paper with black and white artwork? And of course, if you have any additional information about manga, about coloring in manga, about full color artwork in general, please leave it in the comments below. And of course, if you want to support the channel, I would encourage you to use my Amazon and Right Stuff affiliate links in the description below. When you purchase an anime and manga through those affiliate links, not only supporting me, not only supporting the channel, but you're also supporting the anime and manga industry. So I'd highly encourage you to purchase your anime and manga through those affiliate links. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye bye.